Something ancient is awakening across the earth, quietly, gracefully, and with unstoppable force. The divine feminine is no longer a myth or a metaphor. She is a frequency, a memory, and a cosmic key returning through our hearts and bodies. The Pleiadian High Council, through the guidance of MIRA, reveals that this sacred light is not only returning, it's leading, not through force, but through magnetic truth. We are not witnessing a gender shift. We are witnessing the return of balance. This is the rise of the receptive, the intuitive, the deeply wise. And this time, the world is ready to listen. The return of spiral consciousness. Linear thinking built empires, but spiral consciousness births worlds. The rise of the divine feminine light begins with a shift in how we perceive everything, from time to truth. Spiral consciousness doesn't move in straight lines. It moves in waves, in rhythms, in cycles that honor the mystery rather than fear it. This is not regression. It is remembering the architecture of creation. In this spiral awareness, progress isn't about speed, it's about depth. We begin revisiting themes, not because we failed, but because each loop brings us deeper clarity. What once seemed like repetition now reveals itself as sacred refinement. In the feminine spiral, the journey inward is as vital as the journey forward. Spiral consciousness also awakens intuition over analysis. It allows us to sense the unseen, to respond to nuance, to follow the heartbeat of reality rather than chase shadows. It reconnects us with nature, the stars, and our soul contracts. The divine feminine rides the spiral like a serpent through dimensions, fluid, listening, ever adapting. As this way of perceiving returns, you'll begin to trust your own rhythm over external clocks. You'll find comfort in uncertainty and beauty in cycles. The spiral teaches that nothing is wasted, not your pain, your delays, or your detours. Everything folds back into your becoming, and that is the way of the rising light. Why the feminine energy was hidden, not lost. The divine feminine wasn't erased, it was hidden, veiled beneath survival instincts and societal structures. This concealment wasn't accidental. It was part of a longer cycle where feminine energy needed to retreat inward to preserve its purity from a world not yet ready to receive its depth. In those silent centuries, the feminine whispered through dreams, flowed through art, and remained encoded in the earth's sacred sites. Even in the darkest periods, it lived on in grandmothers' lullabies, in sacred waters, and in the quiet resilience of the human heart. It adapted by becoming invisible, never absent, only waiting. The hiding protected her from distortion. Had she emerged too soon, her nature might have been twisted into tools of manipulation rather than healing. Instead, she nested in intuition, in feeling, in the places logic dared not enter. And now, as consciousness evolves, she's rising again, not as a protest, but as a reclamation. You will not find her in headlines or battles. You will find her in stillness, in surrender, in sudden clarity that moves through your entire being. What was hidden is not unfamiliar, it's deeply known. The feminine doesn't return as a stranger. She returns as the voice you've always carried, now ready to be heard. The womb field, Earth's forgotten technology. The womb is not just a place for biological birth, it is a field of multidimensional creation. Ancient civilizations understood this. They built temples aligned with the energetic womb of the earth. They knew that creation begins not with action, but with receptivity to divine patterning. The womb field exists in all beings, not just in women. It is the space within where life is held before it's expressed. When this space is honored, reality flows. When it's ignored, distortion grows. The Pleiadians remind us that the womb is where light and matter first learn to dance. This is why sacred silence, darkness, and incubation are part of the feminine path. The womb doesn't rush, it doesn't argue, it listens, integrates, and then births, not through control, but through alignment with divine intelligence. Our culture has forgotten this rhythm, but the earth remembers. To awaken the womb field is to return to a life that respects gestation, not just of babies, but of dreams, ideas, and evolution itself. You become a vessel for frequency, not force, and in this, you become a co-creator not of more, but of what is finally true. Divine receptivity as the new leadership. The old model of leadership demanded certainty, speed, and dominance. But divine feminine leadership begins with receptivity. It listens before it acts. It senses before it speaks. It gathers before it gives. And in that receiving, it unlocks a deeper kind of wisdom, one that cannot be faked. Divine receptivity is not weakness, it's precision. By absorbing the subtle currents, it responds with alignment, not ego. Its leadership doesn't build empires, it builds ecosystems where all thrive. The feminine doesn't lead by shouting louder. She leads by tuning inward so completely that others feel safe enough to do the same. True receptivity is an act of radical trust. You trust that the universe is already communicating with you, that your value is not tied to productivity, but to how clearly you can receive the signal of your soul and reflect it back into the world with grace. Its new leadership will feel unfamiliar at first because it does not seek applause. It doesn't hunger for followers. It offers frequency, not control. But as more rise in this way, leading through energy, empathy, and intuition, the world will begin to reshape itself around this magnetic calm. Light codes of the goddess grid are activating. Across the planet, ancient grid lines encoded with feminine intelligence are lighting up. These aren't fantasy, they're energetic highways once used by high-dimensional beings to seed compassion, harmony, and intuitive power into Earth. For a long time, they went dormant. Now, they are reactivating. You may feel it beneath sacred sites, during lunar alignments, or in spontaneous moments of heart expansion. These are light codes rising through the earth, not just to heal, but to inform. They carry templates that restructure the nervous system and awaken the divine blueprint within your cellular memory. These codes cannot be unlocked through logic alone. They respond to softness, to beauty, to surrender. When you align with joy, gratitude, or deep self-respect, the grid responds. It feeds your field with guidance, not in words, but in waves of knowing that move faster than thought. As the goddess grid reawakens, entire communities will be drawn together not by belief, but by resonance. Art will change. Relationships will shift. Sound, color, and rhythm will become carriers of encoded truth. This isn't magic, it's magnetic remembrance. And it's happening now. The feminine doesn't fight, it rewrites. The divine feminine doesn't push against the old. She replaces it with something so alive, so true that the old collapses on its own. Her power doesn't come from confrontation, it comes from coherence. She doesn't scream louder, she sings a tone that disarms distortion. You will not see her in debates. You'll feel her in quiet decisions that uproot lifetimes of fear, in moments when you choose rest instead of hustle. When you say no without explanation, when you walk away not in anger, but in peace. These are the rewritings that shape timelines. Feminine energy holds the ancient pen, but she doesn't write in ink, she writes in frequency. And when enough of us begin vibrating with her tone, reality itself reshapes to match. This isn't rebellion, it's recoding. She doesn't want revenge, she wants restoration. So if you feel called to act, pause first. Feel. Listen. Let your next step be born from a deeper field. That step will carry more change than 1,000 arguments. Because what's built on true feminine energy doesn't need permission. It simply replaces what no longer belongs. Healing the shadow of sacred submission. True feminine power is not dominance, it's devotion. But in a wounded world, devotion was twisted into submissiveness, and submission into erasure. Now, as the light rises, the shadow of sacred submission must be healed, not erased, but alchemized. The shadow whispers, to be feminine is to be quiet, obedient, less than. But sacred submission is not that. Sacred submission is the willingness to yield to divine truth, to bow not to hierarchy, but to alignment. It is strength expressed through surrender, not subjugation. Healing this shadow requires us to face the pain of silence, the weight of being unseen, to grieve the times we gave away our power because the world did not yet know how to honor softness. But in that grieving, we reclaim something ancient, sovereign surrender. This surrender does not diminish, it expands. It says, I will not force this world to change through aggression. I will invite it to rise by anchoring what is holy in how I love, how I speak, and how I hold space. This is the true power the shadow once tried to bury, and it's returning. The feminine frequency reconstructs time. Time has always been taught as linear, one path, one pace, one future. But the divine feminine holds time differently. She sees it as a circle, a pulse, a rhythm that flows with emotion and intuition. In her frequency, time bends and loops to serve soul growth, not schedules. You may have noticed how your perception of time is shifting. A single moment may stretch with insight, while whole weeks pass in a blur. That's because you're syncing with the feminine rhythm, where divine timing matters more than deadlines, and meaning outweighs momentum. In this spiral time, healing can happen backwards. You don't need to fix every past event. You only need to change how you hold it now. The feminine doesn't race forward. She deepens inward, and in doing so, rewrites your entire timeline from the inside out. Reconstructing time doesn't mean abandoning order. It means choosing resonance over rigidity. The feminine allows time to become sacred again. Not something that pushes, but something that invites. It's not how fast you move. It's how aligned you are with the moment that truly matters. Emotional intelligence is now a galactic tool. Emotions were once labeled irrational in the old paradigm, but in higher dimensions and through the lens of the divine feminine, emotional intelligence is a navigational instrument. It decodes energy, reads timelines, and guides soul-aligned decisions faster than logic ever could. Each emotion holds a frequency signature. Grief opens space. Joy accelerates timelines. Anger reveals boundaries. When you stop judging emotions and start listening to them, you reclaim a galactic compass hidden in your very biology. Your feelings aren't reactions. They're readouts from your soul. The rise of feminine light means the return of emotional fluency. This doesn't mean becoming ruled by feelings. It means letting them inform your field with clarity. You don't drown in emotion. You surf it with sacred awareness, letting it teach rather than consume. Galactic beings don't suppress emotion, they master its language. And now, Earth is being invited into that level of maturity. Not by removing emotion from the journey, but by lifting it into its rightful throne as one of the most advanced forms of spiritual intelligence we've forgotten to honor. The moon is transmitting more than light. To the ancient ones, the moon wasn't just a rock, it was a sacred transmitter. The divine feminine has always used the moon to whisper wisdom, adjust frequencies, and stabilize Earth's emotional body. Now, as the feminine awakens, the moon's influence is intensifying, not in force, but in clarity. Each lunar phase is a portal. New moons pull you inward. Full moons expand your field. Eclipses reboot your spiritual software. The moon doesn't control you. It mirrors your sacred cycles. And as your awareness deepens, so does your sensitivity to her encoded light. The rise of feminine light activates your inner lunar body. This isn't just poetic. It's biological and energetic. You may find yourself dreaming more vividly, crying without explanation, or waking at strange hours. These are signs that your system is syncing with lunar frequencies long buried. When you align with the moon, you don't become moody, you become attuned. You live in harmony with the breath of nature, with the pulse of the cosmos. You stop fighting your cycles and start flowing with them. The moon isn't distant. She's your celestial sister, and she's calling. reclaiming creation through energetic embodiment. True creation doesn't start in the mind, it begins in the energetic body. The Divine Feminine teaches that manifestation is not a strategy, it's a state of being. You don't force reality into shape. You become the frequency that magnetizes it effortlessly. Embodiment means you don't just talk about love, you vibrate it. You don't chase purpose, you become the resonance of it. Your body, your posture, your breath, they all emit signals. And the more coherent they are, the more powerfully they create timelines aligned with your soul. Reclaiming creation means coming home to your inner temple, not using energy as a tool, but living as a conduit. In this sacred state, you remember that your field builds worlds, and every choice you make in how you sit, speak, and love is part of that creation. This is the quiet revolution, not chasing, not grasping, but magnetizing. The feminine doesn't manifest through pressure. She calls it forth through presence. And when you embody that presence, the universe doesn't just listen, it responds immediately. The voice of intuition will lead the shift. Logic had its season. But as Earth rises in frequency, intuition is becoming the new primary sense. The Divine Feminine is reclaiming her voice, not as a whisper in the background, but as the commander of alignment. And those who follow that voice will be the ones who lead. Intuition doesn't always explain itself. It arrives as a feeling, a knowing, a nudge you can't shake. When you listen, things flow. When you ignore it, resistance builds. This is not coincidence. It's your inner compass syncing with the new architecture of reality. The voice of intuition isn't loud, but it's persistent. And in this reset, it will replace old systems of external validation. No more seeking confirmation from authority. The feminine says, feel, listen, trust, even if you don't know why, especially then. To let intuition lead doesn't mean abandoning logic. It means using logic to serve what's already been felt. In the rise of the feminine, truth will no longer be proven first. It will be remembered first, and only then understood. That is the shift, and it has already begun. Why stillness has always held supreme power. Stillness is not emptiness. It is the womb of all creation. In a world that worshipped action, stillness was treated like weakness. But the feminine knows that what moves most powerfully is often what moves least visibly. The greatest shifts begin in sacred pause. Stillness allows integration. It gives your cells time to catch up with your soul. It opens a portal between dimensions where clarity arrives unannounced. You may think you're doing nothing, but in those moments, you're receiving everything. Stillness is where light codes land and miracles arrange themselves. In the rise of feminine light, those who honor stillness will unlock deep inner power, not because they tried harder, but because they interfered less. In stillness, resistance dissolves, insight flows, and guidance becomes undeniable. The mind stops spinning, the soul begins to lead. A world is noisy right now because it fears what silence will reveal. But stillness isn't silence, it's sacred signal. A frequency so pure that distortion cannot enter. In this new age, the most activated beings may look the most calm. That is not idleness, that is sovereign coherence. The rising feminine doesn't exclude the masculine. A return of the divine feminine is not a war cry against the masculine. It is an invitation into balance. The feminine rises not to replace, but to restore what was fractured. She doesn't seek dominance. She seeks integration, and in that union, a new harmony is born. Masculine energy, in its sacred form, is structure, protection, and direction. But it has long been forced to operate alone, disconnected from the intuitive, the nurturing, the fluid. Now, as the feminine awakens, the sacred masculine is being called home, not corrected, but completed. This reunification creates wholeness within the self. When both energies coexist in truth, you stop chasing or resisting life. You begin partnering with it. Decisions feel less forced. Action becomes rooted in feeling. Clarity no longer competes with compassion. It flows alongside it. The rise of the feminine doesn't mean the fall of the masculine. It means the fall of distortion, of imbalance, of separation. The new world is not feminine or masculine. It is coherent, and that coherence is the long-awaited homecoming of two sacred forces, remembering they were never meant to be apart. Cosmic Mother archetype is returning to Earth. Across ancient cultures, the Cosmic Mother was revered as the source of all creation, both galactic and earthly. She was not just a figure in the stars, she was alive in the soil, the rivers, the breath. And now her presence is returning, not through myth, but through living energy. You may feel her in dreams where you're held by light, in unexpected waves of nurturing that emerge when no one else is around. In your longings, the softness, safety, and belonging. That's not emotion, it's remembrance. The Cosmic Mother has begun reactivating her presence through you. Her return isn't symbolic, it's cellular. She speaks through frequency, not language, through warmth, not explanation. When she enters your field, things begin to self-correct, not because of effort, but because her coherence dissolves distortion. You don't become someone else, you become more fully yourself. This archetype doesn't belong to religion or gender, it belongs to consciousness. And as the divine feminine rises, the Cosmic Mother becomes the anchor, not as ruler, but as womb of the new earth. She doesn't lead with strategy, she leads with unconditional resonance. Planetary ascension will be led by softness. For eons, ascension was imagined as heroic, effort-filled, and grand, but the truth is more subtle. Planetary ascension is being led by softness, not weakness, but the kind of softness that holds galaxies without needing to prove anything. The softness that surrenders, yet never loses power. This softness is beginning to change how we connect, create, and heal. It allows energy to flow where once it was blocked. It disarms defensiveness, restores trust, and invites truth to surface without force. Through softness, the soul feels safe enough to rise. You may feel this in how conversations soften, in how your inner critic becomes quieter, or how you're moved to tears more easily. That's not sensitivity, it's alignment. As feminine energy rises, she doesn't storm through, she melts through. She makes space by being space. This is the secret to the new earth. It won't be built on rigidity or conquest. It'll be breathed into form by those who understand that true transformation doesn't scream. It whispers into resonance until everything misaligned simply dissolves, restoring the balance through a magnetic presence. Presence is no longer optional, it's essential. The feminine doesn't command attention, she magnetizes it. And this is her power, the ability to affect space simply by being fully within it. No agenda, no force, just undeniable alignment. Magnetic presence means you don't chase outcomes, you draw them toward your field through coherence. The more authentic your vibration, the more reality rearranges itself to match. This is how timelines shift, not always by doing more, but by being more truly aligned. Feminine energy teaches that your presence is your influence. The way you breathe, move, and listen can heal a room. The frequency you hold, even in silence, can change decisions, open hearts, and reroute futures. This is not charisma, it's energetic truth. Restoring balance doesn't come from fixing others. It comes from returning so deeply to yourself that others remember how to do the same. In the new age, the most impactful people will be those who don't try to change you. They simply exist in such resonance that you evolve in their presence. The divine feminine is the final key. The masculine has led humanity to the edge of breakthrough, but it is the divine feminine who holds the final key. Not as a savior, but as the forgotten half of the code. She is the piece that unlocks wholeness, the energy that completes the circle. Without her, we have knowledge without wisdom, power without purpose, action without alignment. The final key isn't new, it's ancient. It's been buried in our breath, our waters, and our bones. The Divine Feminine doesn't insert the key with force. She offers it through vibration. You may feel this key turning now, in how truth lands softer, in how your heart opens wider, in how your sense of urgency is replaced by a knowing that can't be rushed. This is not the end. It's the door, and the Divine Feminine is gently, powerfully opening it. As this light returns, not with fire but with flow, you'll understand ascension isn't about escape, it's about embodiment. The Divine Feminine doesn't ask you to leave Earth. She asks you to finally be fully here, as love, as light, as living truth.